Okay, everybody, we're going to get started with our next session, which is our Fireside Chat Without the Fire with the founders of Databricks, Ali Godsi and Jan Stojka. And I'd like to start by giving a brief introduction to both of these professors. So Jan Stojka is the executive chairman and co-founder of Databricks, and he's a professor in the EECS department at UC Berkeley. A few words about his projects. At the AMP Lab, Jan led the software systems effort, which included the development of Apache Spark, as well as two other high-profile open-source projects. In 2006, he co-founded Conviva, a startup to commercialize technologies for large-scale video distribution. Jan is an ACM Fellow and has received numerous awards, including the SIGCOMM Test of Time Award and the ACM Doctoral Dissertation Award. Jan holds a PhD in electrical and computer engineering from Carnegie Mellon University and an MS in computer science and control engineering from Polytechnic University of Bucharest. Ali Godsi is the CEO and co-founder of Databricks, responsible for the growth and international expansion of the company. He previously served as the VP of Engineering and Product Management before taking the role as CEO in January 2016. In addition to his work at Databricks, Ali serves as an adjunct professor in EECS at Berkeley. Ali also was key to Apache Spark, and ideas from his academic research in the areas of resource management and scheduling and data caching have been applied to many different projects. Ali received his MBA from Mid-Sweden University in 2003 and a PhD from KTH, the Royal Institute of Technology in Stockholm, in 2006 in the area of distributed computing. Please welcome Jan and Ali.
So, the first question, just to warm things up, tell us a little bit about your life before coming to Berkeley. Maybe add some color around the introduction. And what are the defining moments for you, again, pre-Berkeley?
Okay. First of all, thanks for having me here. This is special for me. I was born in Iran during the revolution. So this is like the Islamic revolution that happened in 1978. Apparently, a lot of kids were born around that time. It was like a baby boom. Like, when revolutions happen, people are like, hey, the world's going to end. Let's just have kids. And so that was it. And then my parents were sort of in an opposition group, so they sort of fought, in underground until they almost got caught in 1984. And we had to just flee with 24 hours notice. So we fled to the first place that would accept us. And Sweden had a generous asylum policy, so we ended up in Sweden, of all the places. I grew up there and found the Commodore 64 in third grade, and he had a basic ROM, and there you go. Off coding. So that's kind of what happened. I mean, that's kind of my generation. A lot of kids were like that, right? They just got a computer when they were early in school, and they just coded. They're 24/7 from then on. So I'm one of those guys. One story, I don't know if you know this. So eventually I started doing my PhD in 2002 in Sweden. And it was in the era of peer-to-peer networking. And Jan was, he had just published this paper, Cord, that took over the whole world. And we had a paper that we submitted to, I don't think you remember this.
IPTPS.
Okay, IPTPS. Yeah, we submitted a paper to IPTPS. And of course, American universities have, deadline at 6 p.m., which is 3 a.m. in Sweden. So we worked through the night to submit a paper to that conference. And we missed the deadline by like 2 minutes. And we emailed the chair of the conference, which was Jan Stojka, and said, please, like, our paper is amazing, and, you have to accept it. We missed it by 1 minute. And he said, what's your paper about? And we said, it's actually about your system. That's all. He's like, okay, come in here.
So I remember that.
Yes, so that's how I met Jan in 2002 from overseas, submitting that paper to IPTPS in 2002 or 3.
Yeah, that's a great story. So then in 2009, Ali came here as a visiting scholar. He was assistant professor at that time at KTH, Royal Institute of Technology in Sweden, probably the most prestigious school there. And since then, we've been working together one way or another. So tell us a little bit, how did you find the department, the labs, university when you arrived here? Anything particularly that struck you back then?
Yeah, actually, if we go back a little bit further, in 2006, I sort of visited Stanford, Palo Alto, HP labs, and so on for a brief time just before finishing my PhD thesis, and I hated it. I was like, I hate the United States. I don't want to move here. It's all highways. It's like suburban. It's like you want to cross the street. It could take 10 minutes. There is no sidewalks. It's awful. And I remember I need to buy new socks. And they're like, oh, just go to the Stanford Mall. So I went to the Stanford Mall, and they're like, oh, $30 for a pair. And I was like, I'm never going to move here. And then actually there was a research paper, I think it was, I forget, but there was a paper, that was presented at Berkeley, and I drove up here, and I just like fell in love with the city. I was like, this is Europe. Like, this is like home. This is like Sweden. So I loved it. And I was like, okay, if I ever move to the United States, it'll be Berkeley. Otherwise, I would never move here. And that was it. So then, in 2009, we talked, and we had this opportunity for me to just come visit 1 year. And so I was kind of already in love with the city and this part of kind of United States. So so I already had like a preconceived notion that this is kind of awesome place. And then I showed up in 2009, and it was better than I even thought, because it was like, I think it was a very magical time period for at least the kind of research we did here in the RAD lab, AMP lab, became RISE and now SKY. Because I think, first of all, I think like there was like a lot of really, really strong students and faculty. Like it was like the kind of, sometimes there's this magical period where like all the stars align. And then I think the research that was going on in the world at the time, cloud computing was taking off, and we were kind of at the forefront of that. And I remember we talked to MIT, and they were like, we don't want to touch that stuff. That's just helping Google and Silicon Valley tech. We're doing I don't know what, something else. Exactly. We were pure. We don't want to touch that stuff. And then Stanford, we used to joke, was like Hall of Fame. There was no one there. So they were kind of absent. So I kind of feel like we dominated the cloud computing, that whole like there's a new computer, like computers are, Dave Patterson was saying computers are not getting any faster. We hit this Moore's wall. The new computer is a data center. So we had this renaissance period where we were like, let's rebuild all the software stack from scratch for the new computer, which is the data center. Yeah. It was amazing.
And it was a turning point then when about the open source starting to become more dominant. You remember the discussion before then? It's like, oh, what we are going to do? We are going to do a demo, and at the end of the lab, that's kind of, and it's going to be coherent. But it was this kind of renaissance of the open source.
Yeah,
Can
because
you say that?
because there was so there was this new computer, which is the data center, and it didn't really have a proper software stack, right? The operating systems and whatnot that had been built were not built for that new computer and the new use cases. So Silicon Valley tech companies were trying to fumble around, figure out how to build new software for it, and open source was the main vehicle they were using. And we were very excited. Many of us came here, we were like in awe of what happened, with Berkeley systems distribution, BSD, and like Berkeley had a history of amazing open source contributions. So we were excited to join that wave and contribute to open source projects and kind of have a big impact in the computer world with that open source software. So yeah, it was exciting times. So there was that, there was the cloud computing, and then there was like the early era of machine learning. Like machine learning had started being used in Google, Twitter, a few of these companies. And then I would say the fourth thing that was happening also, we were lucky, I think, was that there was like a boom in Silicon Valley tech. Twitter had just started, Uber had,
Facebook before that.
Facebook was a small company. You could go there, and Mark Zuckerberg would just be sitting there in in his office, and you could just go in there and brainstorm with him, and
it was a time you go there and say, oh, I need this kind of logs. Oh, go and change the system.
Yes, yeah. There's like take whatever data you want.
That was
do machine learning on it. Tell us if you find anything interesting in there. So there was like the confluence of all these exciting times, and I think it was very exciting for us working in the lab. And then it was of course the like open spirit. The whole removed all the offices, put everybody in a common place where we can collaborate. And it was very multidisciplinary, very collaborative, but also very competitive. I think that was just like the perfect combination of things that happened.
Yeah. Now, Databricks is not your first company. You actually co-founded a startup in Sweden, Realism, right? And just curious, can you say a few words about it? And in particular, was there a kind of any lesson you learned from that experience?
Yes. Yes. So we started a company called Realism based on the peer-to-peer research we were doing in Sweden. And the idea, we were equally excited back then about peer-to-peer. We thought that peer-to-peer technology was going to have a big impact in the world, and you could sort of decentralize things. And it's kind of like the precursor in some sense to this crypto stuff that's happening now. So we founded a company that would significantly lower, cut down it was just much more efficient way of distributing video streams. And we thought, this was like just after sort of multicast and all of these things were there, we had finally found the algorithms to make this scalable. Unfortunately, what happened is the cost of bandwidth just kept exponentially going down. So we basically solved the problem that you didn't need to solve because there was an abundance of network bandwidth out there, and those bottlenecks just went away. So
we had the same experience, Conviva and Realism.
Yeah.
It was just
similar
on
experience.
different sides of the
So
the world.
I think we created a lot of cool algorithms that were very efficient but not needed.
So now switching gears and talking about Spark Databricks, just curious about, from your perspective, when did you first start thinking that Spark is going to be something big, is going to have a real impact in the industry?
I think we felt that already in the lab. I mean, I certainly felt that already. So we started Databricks in 2013, but I think in 2011 and 12, we did have this feeling that we could kind of change the world with this because the existing software out there was just so inferior. And we were doing research on the existing software, which was called Hadoop at the time, and it wasn't very great. So you could kind of see that there is a big opportunity here to do something that's orders of magnitude better, faster, can do more things, more efficient, better code base, all that kind of stuff. So I think we kind of felt like, really, does the state of affairs need to be this bad in the world? Isn't there? Shouldn't we can beat that? But I think I was thinking like, hey, we'll publish an amazing academic paper and get best paper award, and then the whole world wakes up and reads that paper and adopts that approach, and then we can continue doing research. And it didn't work that way because there's forces in the market, a lot of funding around this Hadoop companies. At the time, it was called Cloudera and so on, and they had a vested interest in not reading those papers and making those successful. So I think there was we kind of knew the opportunities there, but there was also part frustration. Like I'll give a story. Like we sent Matei in as a kind of mole into one of these companies one summer as intern. We said, can you get them to wake up, read them the paper slowly, explain to them what it is, and he came out that summer and said, no, it's not going to happen. They're not interested. Same thing happened at Facebook. Yeah. They also kind of gave us the runaround. They wasted a lot of our time, had us solve a lot of their problems. They gave us a bunch of, hey, this is a hard problem. Can you solve that? We solved that. And we said, okay, great. Use our software. And they're like, we're not sure. So we spent multiple years trying to get. And then with Twitter, we actually basically sacrificed the student. Yeah. Ben basically went full time to Twitter. And he was able to get Twitter to use our software. But he basically interrupted his PhD and took 2-3 years to just play the politics inside Twitter to get them. And it was just politics. And then eventually he got them to adopt our software. So we were frustrated. So we thought we want to have the impact ourselves. So that's when we thought maybe we should start exploring, start a company, and make this happen ourselves instead of just hoping that others will do it.
Now, it's very interesting you are talking about wanting to have an impact and in the industry out there. But another interesting aspect was there, about publishing these papers, Meso, Spark, and so forth. It wasn't an easy journey, actually, to get them accepted.
Well, I mean, the problem is, in our area of research, these publishing LPUs is much easier. Here's a seminal paper. I have improved it by 20%, provably so. It's obviously a seminal paper, so you can't question that. We have improved it 20-30%. You can't question that either. And the seminal paper was published by someone very, with great authority. You have to accept this paper. Those papers we could like publish day and night. But the papers that were kind of more, hey, here's a completely different way of viewing things and defining things, they're kind of a little bit of a different paradigm. They just kept getting rejected, because there's like 100 ways to find flaws in those papers. It's like, I don't agree with you, and what's really novel, and is this, I don't kind of agree, because it's not so easy to prove, quantify.
It was done in databases many years back or something like that. Right?
So I think we published a lot of papers in those years, and it was easy actually to publish those and get best paper awards and all that. We had a really hard time publishing the most influential, the most important, the papers we wanted to get published. We weren't able to get published so easily. We struggled. And I think our best paper actually never got published, which is the HTTP, the paper that said that HTTP is going to rule the planet. We never really was able to get it through. First they said it's not, first it was like, I don't think this is true. And then eventually when it was obvious, they said, well, this is obvious now, And like, yeah, but you're rejecting it every year. And like, yeah, everybody knows that. Like the internet is...
So now let's go a little bit, let's start talking about Databricks.
Yeah.
And tell us what you remember about the early days at Databricks. What was the culture back then? What do you think were defining moments early on?
Yeah, so first of all, I think like the culture of Databricks was the culture of the labs here at Berkeley, which was, first of all, like we had this thing that we thought is special at Berkeley, city of Berkeley, but also UC Berkeley, which is you can change the world, you can do it. That kind of mentality, we had it all along, that we can change anything. We can do whatever we want, we can change the world. We can, things are bad out there, we can just change them, and we can make it happen, and, just believe and you can do that. And, so I think that was important because we basically questioned status quo and said, we don't believe in on-premises, we believe in the cloud, we believe in AI, machine learning, we believe in open source. And the business world immediately in the early days told us, you're wrong. Like every expert we would hire, every analyst, anyone who knew what they were doing told us, you guys are clueless, you're wrong, you can't do this. But I think it was this kind of the Berkeley mentality of just question the norm and come up with what you think, what the world should look like. If it makes sense from first principles, then go for it, and you can make it happen if you believe. We used to quote it's cliche, but it said, if you think you can do it, or if you think you can't do it, you're right. Right? We used to quote that all the time and put that. And then it was collaborative, right? It was like a very collaborative spirit. It was competitive, just like the labs here were.
Healthy debate.
Yeah, it was a healthy debate. It was a very fierce debate culture. It was we ran it kind of like a research lab. We were working 24/7. And we had a hard time hiring people from outside because they would come in and say, wow, you guys, all you do is argue. How can you get anything done? All you do is argue all day long.
We are actually going into these rooms and we saw that no one is hearing us, but everyone was hearing us.
Yeah. So I do remember that. And still to this day, the more seasoned executives we hire, the more they say, wow, you guys like debating. Like when you ever get anything done?
Yeah, and to give you a sense about actually to your point that you're, Databricks trying to do something different. At that point when we started, the only big successful open source company was
Red Hat. Yeah.
Right, which has a kind of different business model. And when it comes to cloud and the big data, we are always people pointing out that, look, guys, you know about this company, Cloudera, very successful. Cloudera, they were supposed to be in the cloud, and they tried the cloud, and they pivoted, and now they are on-prem. They are super successful. What are you talking about?
Yeah, people definitely question the open source model. And now, when we look now, probably like by density of engineers and what we're doing, we're probably the largest company that bases its whole business model on open source. Red Hat used to be, before us, the biggest one, but Red Hat had to sell. It didn't basically work, and they had to sell to IBM. So that was another thing they would criticize. The cloud would be another one of those things that they would criticize. And then, machine learning was kind of like this kind of esoteric ad tech click-through rate business. And AI meant robotics at that time, kind of.
Now, if I remember correctly, when we started Databricks, your plan was, okay, I'm going to do this for 2-3 years, and I'm going to go back in academia.
Yes.
Right? When was the first time you realized that actually what you want is to build the company?
Well, I mean, I'll be honest, I had such a great blast here at UC Berkeley. I always wanted to go back to do that and just publish the papers and like just have impact and solve problems. And, but when Databricks was started, I mean, you were much more involved. I was like, wow, all the people from the lab are joining the company. So if I'm going to stay at Berkeley, none of the people are going to be, they're all over there. So I might as well just go over there. And then it was just like a reluctant, more and more spend time at the company because the company needed us, like it needed our help. Otherwise it was going to fall. So it's kind of like, you know, you have this kid and you have to take care of the kid. So I never really wanted to do really Databricks ever. And even like, I would say even the CEO role and all of that, it was kind of like, look, if we don't do it, it will fall apart. My heart was really always like, hey, go back and do research. And that's going to be that's kind of what I wanted to do. So I did not follow my dreams.
Can still be in the future very much. So now about Berkeley and also about the culture of debate, you know, it's like you said, you really like Berkeley, and actually it was this episode when we decided to move Databricks from Berkeley to San Francisco. We had a lot of debates.
Yes.
Founder team was split half-half.
Hey, actually, let me say, Jan was on the camp, move the company to San Francisco. I was strongly in the camp of keep it in Berkeley. Okay.
Yes.
And it was like the company got divided into two halves, and there was a fierce lobbying effort from the two opposing, warring parties.
And data and statistics and everything.
Exactly. So Jan really wanted to move it to San Francisco. He said, you know, that's the only way we can be a reputable company. And I said, no, let's put our mark on the map. We'll be that Berkeley company that, you know, it'll be actually great for us, and we can hire great people here. And I was like, and, you know, the commute's going to be terrible. And Jan, turns out, there was a bus stop right outside his house that stops exactly where he wanted us to get an office in San Francisco. So he had a one-shot kind of stop with Wi-Fi, like with one stop, like, you know, it's the perfect commute. The dividing lines in the company were very simple. The people and the students who had moved to San Francisco really wanted us, thought it's absolutely the right thing to do. And those of us who lived in Berkeley absolutely thought we should stay here. We started doing data science. We looked at crime rates. We looked at the probability that any of us is going to get hurt or something like that. It was kind of a draw, but we try to, like, you know, lies statistics. We try to manipulate as much as we could to see where we would end up. I do remember that we invited the Berkeley mayor came actually to our office. To convince us to stay and lobby the people that needed to be lobbied, that we need to stay in Berkeley. And he brought a whole entourage of people that run the city kind of. And they came in and we started presenting, right? It's like super complicated technical topics about what we're doing. And they had no idea what we're saying. So he immediately fell asleep in the meeting. Like, so he was just sleeping through the whole meeting. And then he woke up at the end and he came and said, I hope you stay in Berkeley. I hope that everyone one day will have a data brick in their home. And then he left. So that did not convince Jan. So we moved to the city.
Yeah, but you know, just going back to this, even today the company is in San Francisco for 8 years now.
Yeah.
You are still living in Berkeley.
Yeah, I'm still in Berkeley. Yeah.
So
we have an office in Berkeley now. So I hope that we can move the center of gravity back a little back here. You know, I would say the most important engineers live in Berkeley. Not including myself in that group.
So now, Databricks, early on, you're leading the engineering and the product, and took over as CEO in 2016, early 2016. And since then, you really have overseen one of the fastest growing enterprise company ever. What is the secret? What are the biggest challenges, early days? What are the biggest challenges now?
Yeah, I mean, the challenges are different, but the secret to success is betting on those secular trends. So it's that Berkeley mentality of you can change the world is kind of right. If you want to ever go up against these big, giant corporations that have, I mean, they're basically monopolies, right? I mean, I hope this is not being recorded. The only way, it's kind of like a David versus Goliath situation. They have all the funding, all the resources, all the lawyers, all the sort of advantages on their side. So you have to bet on some secular trends. And you kind of have to be right about them, too. But they have to be secular. So you can't just say, oh, we're going to be 10, 20% better, right? Like if you see ChatGPT today or Bing having that, you can't say I can do that 30% better than them. That's not going to work. You need to bet on something that everyone else is saying, no, that's stupid. That's not going to happen. Like, oh, we think the cloud's going to take over the whole world, or we think machine learning is going to permeate everything, or we think open source is an amazing business model. And then it has to be the case that the consensus view is you're wrong. If it's not, the big guys will quickly pivot and remove any advantage or clever insight that you have. They just need time. Time is on their side. So within like 6 months, they can just erode that and arbitrage your advantages away. So you need to bet on some big secular trends that there's a consensus for many years that they're not true. And then eventually they become true. And then once they become true, you've had like a 3-4 year head start, way ahead of everyone else. Now they can't catch up to you. And then you have to continue being at it and moving fast. So that's like the basic idea. So it is the Berkeley kind of spirit of change the world and kind of change it in a way that people don't believe in was the thing. But the challenges were different. In the early days, the big challenge was no one knew who we were, and they'd never heard of us. I remember going to a big customer in New York who said, Spark is great. And so, oh, thank you. And he said, yeah, IBM created it. Those guys are great. IBM guys are very good. And we said, hey, we actually created it. And he said, IBM did, So I think the first few years, the challenge was like kind of how do you rise above the noise and get noticed. There's like so much noise, so many companies, so many people kind of doing the same thing. So that was the primary problem, I would say, and challenge in the first few years. And just building a product that works, that people love. That was the challenge from 2013 to 15. 15, kind of overnight, and we kind of disagree on when exactly it happened, but it happened in 15. The world kind of like changed suddenly to saying Spark is suddenly the best thing since apple pie. So from 2009, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, that was not the case. It had problems, or they didn't know about it. All the rage was about this other thing called Hadoop. And then 15, overnight kind of something flipped. So like, the way media works is that I don't know how much original content is being created in media. There's a lot of like herd behavior. So suddenly once like that flips, there's like a critical mass, they all will just suddenly start going in that direction. So for all those years, they were all saying, Hadoop is the greatest thing, it's going to change the world, amazing. And then something happens in 2015, and suddenly everybody keeps parroting, oh, the greatest thing ever that has happened is like Spark, obviously. And there was articles every day about it. We argue about what the inflection point is. I think the inflection point is this silly thing that we did. We were up all night, and we won the sort benchmark where we proved that we can do the fastest petabyte sort that's ever been done by mankind with fewest number of machines. And that made a big splash. And I think that kind of like, I feel like that was like, it was an inflection point after which.
And it was seeded because you remember about this IBM effort, because that's where the thing was created by IBM. So IBM went and plastered everything about Spark,
Spark TC, Spark Technology Center.
We are sending pictures with this kind of billboards in whatever corner of the world.
Yeah, but that was after. So right after we won the benchmark, and everybody kind of realized everything is going that way, and the herd decided to go in the other direction. Suddenly, IBM said, we're going to train 1 million data scientists on Spark. We're starting Spark Technology Center, and so on. And that's why it's in some of those meetings, people would say, oh, IBM created Spark, and it's great.
It was over a few months.
Yeah.
It was very fast.
But then, right that moment, the game 100% changed, and Databricks kind of went through a phase transition to a completely different company with different challenges and a different set of issues, and it was no longer, it kind of basically changed fundamentally.
So it's a classic question, but you spent almost, half so far, your time, academia and, industry. And the question always asked, it's, how they are alike, how they are different?
Well, I mean, I've already touched, I think, on a lot of similarities, right? Figuring out what the secular trends are that are going to change the world. I think the debate culture, we didn't emphasize the strengths of it. Those eventually ended up being the cultural principles of Databricks. One of the cultural principles we have is truth-seeking, which means we're trying to figure out the truth, and I think debate is a great way to get into the truth, and I think academia has a lot of that, right? The research papers are trying to get to the truth, right? They're trying to push the boundary of knowledge. Those are great. Working from first principles is another cultural principle of Databricks. I think that's also something that's great in academia, right? You like derive things from first principles. It's kind of like an axiomatic approach where you deduce things. I think those are the advantages. I actually think that you also get good at marketing, believe it or not. I know people don't want to think that about academic research, but convincing super skeptical researchers on the planet that your idea is correct requires quite a bit of marketing, actually. So actually, I think you're secretly becoming a world-class marketer as a researcher. I know people are not going to like that, but you're basically you have to convince the hardest opponents, the fiercest, most skeptical people on the planet that your idea is correct and get through peer review. And that makes you very good at arguing and with facts, kind of.
This shouldn't come as a surprise for people who do not know. Actually, Ali also has a degree, an MBA degree, logistics and marketing, right?
True. Yeah. But I really learned marketing in research. So I think those are the advantages. I also think solving hard problems. Not necessarily relevant problems, so that's where the mismatch sometimes happens. The cutest problems that you can solve that are easily defined, that you can publish easily, are not necessarily the ones that will have the biggest impact in the world. So therein lies some tension. I think in the Rad Lab, Amp Lab, and so on, RISE and so on, we always wanted to have impact. So we were interested, and we a little bit ignored when the academic community would say, well, what's new there, or what's novel there? I think the Berkeley way was always, who cares? We're changing the world, and we can do that, and we think this is research. And again, MIT would say that's not. And Stanford was waiting on starting the next company once we had published the papers. So I think those are advantages that I think many of us got from research. I think the things that are different and that are challenging for a startup, well, I think first of all, it depends on which phase of your company are you. I think it's like, is the 50-person company trying to get product market fit? Is it a 150, 200-person company? So there's this thing called Donber's number, which is 150. Around 150, 200 people. For me, I felt like it was around 250 people. Around 250 people, there's a phase transition that happens in how you organize things, where things start breaking down because there's too many people. You don't know everyone. You don't know everyone's name. You don't know everything that's going to go on in the company. So you have to shift to systematic organizational thinking, where you have to put processes in place, and you can't do it the way the way research works, where you're in the details, bottom up, know every little detail. That we were very good at that, right? All the way down to no, you're wrong. There's a little bit here that's flipped. You can't apply that kind of organizational mechanism after 150, 200 people. And then when you have thousands of employees, small inefficiencies can kill you. So they become hugely problematic. So that's a different challenge. So I would say the things that are different that I did not learn too much when I was doing research is how do you inspire huge groups of people, diverse set of groups of people with different cultural backgrounds. And when I say different cultural backgrounds, I don't mean this person is from Asia and this person is from Europe. I mean, this is a salesperson. They want to do sales. This is a marketing person. This is a finance person, right? They have very different incentives, backgrounds, understanding of the world. How do you motivate all of them? How do you get them all aligned? So that kind of leadership it was a challenge figuring it out and learning it. The second thing is how do you make sure that everybody's motivated executing so that you can get everyone really kind of moving that company forward. Otherwise, you're just adding people, and it can actually start creating you can end up with a lot of dysfunction and chaos and disagreement, and the forces canceling each other out and bouncing into each other. So those are the kind of challenges that are different. I liked them eventually. I learned to fall in love with them because I think what we liked at Berkeley, one of the things we liked is we liked the challenge. And these are pretty challenging problems as well to have to solve. So that would be the contrast, I would say. But we've kept a lot of the research, a lot of the Berkeley spirit mentality still sort of permeates Databricks. And I think it's kind of one of our secrets to success. We have less politics because we're truth-seeking. The things we do make more sense because they're first principled rather than just, oh, everybody does it that way. Those are some of the core things that we got from here.
Sounds great. Now, let's look at move and focus a little bit on the future. So even though by many measures, say Berkeley is at the top, it can surely do better. How do you think Berkeley can do better? How can it increase its impact?
I think do those things that you're uniquely good at and differentiate those. I can't speak for, look, so you asked about UC Berkeley. I can't speak for UC Berkeley.
No, it's your opinion.
Yeah, just my opinion in the sort of realm of like the areas that I've been working on and what I've seen. I think open source software is a huge area where Berkeley could be, I think, 100 times more impactful. Like it could become the absolutely by far most dominated university on the planet because all these companies are trying to make money on software, but they're keeping it proprietary. So by just pushing the boundaries on how you solve these problems in open source, I think it's a systems challenge, and I think you can have huge impact there. So I think that can be done much more systematically. I think we're very good at it. Maybe we're best in the world at UC Berkeley at doing that. But I still think that there's a lot of room for growth of how can you systematically help create world-class, high-impact research systems that have impact in the world. Kind of like back in the day with BSD and those kind of things. So I think that's one. I think second is attracting sort of what I would call the people that want to, like many of us came here because we felt like this is where real systems are being built. There's toy systems in other universities, but Berkeley builds real software systems with big impact. So attracting that kind of talent from all over the world, I think helps as well. So that's another second one. And then, I can't speak to the other challenges, like funding challenges and so on, public university and so on. I don't have any insights there.
Okay. Last question. I have only 2 more minutes. This is for entrepreneurs, people who are thinking, want to become entrepreneurs in this room or who are listening to this Fireside chat. What problems would you like to see emerging startup solving? In other words, what are the secular trends these new startups you think they should write?
Yeah, I don't have a crystal ball. But it's obvious to everyone. We've been saying it for like a decade almost, but that machine learning is going to have a huge impact on everything on the planet. I think looking at verticals for machine learning it's going to be a highly impactful area. For instance, if I told you, this is not something we are doing, so it's just a random idea. If I told you, I'll give you the best, if you have a health issue, I give you by far the best diagnosis that you've ever seen. It's a doctor that I know who has seen 3 billion patients. And you will get the best humanly possible diagnosis for that from that doctor. And they'll use your genetic composition and history and all that. And they'll give you, what would that be worth to mankind, to you, to us? No company has cracked the code on that. It's actually, spoiler alert, my wife's a doctor, so I saw her go through like medical school. They're basically training them on learning random forest or decision trees, right? They're trying to use a human brain to do decision trees, which is very inefficient. They call it differential diagnosis. They don't call it decision trees, but it is really decision trees. And you can have huge impact. That's like one vertical. There could be many other verticals like that, where I think machine learning will have huge impact, and there will be companies behind it as well. So I'm very excited about that.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.